Call the meeting to order. This is the meeting of the Manchester MBTA zoning task force. In November 30th, and it's 6:30 p.m. We'll take a roll call. Sandy Bogner Turner.
Here.
Jim Smith.
Here.
Manella.
Here.
Steve Filbert.
Here.
I'm here, Chris Oley, and we're missing Dar, who should be here shortly. Denny Hall will not be.
And
Mike,
yes.
Oh, and Harris. Huh. Well, we have a quorum, so we can get started. So I'd like to go right into the business of the evening, which is we want to start talking about the criteria for zoning districts. And so, yes, Emily, I'll let you take this away and let you run this for a while.
Fair enough. Well, first of all, I'd like to introduce Madge Pate, who is a member of the Ennis Associates team and she's from Gloucester, so I thought she'd be perfect for it. So Madge is also sort of my right-hand person on reviewing zoning, so I'm going to get her started as soon as possible in this process.
So Ann Harrison is working, so she is here. We started right on time. We're being punctual.
Let's check. After 6:30. It is after 6:30, unless they fix that clock. It was running ahead. Oh, so I think you may have started a minute early. No. It was 6:30 on the technology, right, technological devices. You were 30 seconds late. That's the level of precision that's far beyond my ken. Glad you're here.
How proud.
Yeah.
Maybe scan and face the camera.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the boys might
I sit in this chair.
project that just because it is like.
I can.
It's right here.
Let's put down there.
Thank you.
Oh, I always don't use it.
Yes, you know, just put all of this together, this project.
She said she was ordering gardens. I thought she meant the one. And she said, you think people will use it? I said.
So I've been asked to stand up here so the camera can get my voice.
Right, yeah.
Excellent. So there are two things that we talked about at the last meeting that we wanted to make sure that we covered tonight. One is thinking about the geography of the districts. Richard has already started doing some work. Had MIT students doing some work. We've been doing some work. So that was one of the two items. And we've got two sets of maps so that we can get out and draw the maps and talk about that. The other thing, and you mentioned this just now, Chris, is we were talking about the planning criteria at the last meeting. So I just created things so that we can write them down and the types of things that you might want to think about. We talked a little bit about some of those last time, thinking about mixed use and preserving commercial, thinking about the historic assets that you have in town. So I'm going to explain the maps, because you can see that easily. I'm going to explain the maps that we have now, the information that's on them, and then we can decide if we want to start with the maps first, go to that, work back and forth between them, or start there and then go to the maps. So this top layer, let me just pull these out of the base. This top layer is the entire town. It has your zoning districts on it. You'll be able to see the boundaries. So think of the zoning district as being within the outline of the color. It also has the areas shaded in gray that the MIT students looked at. The areas outlined that Richard did, and there's a key on there. It has your excluded land in green. So that's a state supplied layer, or that's part of the MBTA Communities Act data set. It has your sensitive land, that's a hatch. Remember, excluded land is not used for calculating unit capacity. Sensitive land is, but can be used within your district for continuity. sensitive land is something that you might want to think about, right? Maybe floodplains or the second layer of water protection. So it's just something that at a local level might be part of your criteria to think about. So we've also got the location of the T station, the commuter rail station. And for you, it's not something we've done yet for communities, but I thought after the conversation we had, it was important. We took the macros layer, so the Massachusetts Historical Commission has a GIS layer of all the assets, all the historical assets in their database. So we have identified at least, however up to date it was at the last time they've done it, we've identified with the red star, all of the historic buildings are on that macros layer. So we can look at those clusters of historic buildings. You also have, of course, the parcels, rights of way, water. Then on the second layer, what we've done is we've taken an inset basically of this center district here. The yellow line is your half-mile radius. So we've taken that half-mile radius and blown it up on the bottom two sheets here, so that when we get to really talking about your central area, we can dive into here. And it also means that we can work back between the entire town and the areas that you really started to focus on. So I'm happy to start in either way. So the idea of this is to give us some guidance as to the areas to test. Started off with Richards, we've actually put those into our database now, but we are actually adding the existing zoning back in, just so we can do an existing check. Wanted to make sure that we have at least these done for today. So we'll be doing that. And then anything that comes out of today's meeting in terms of testing, we will also test and then start to pull all of this together for our first community meeting with us. And we want to talk to you a little bit about that at the end. I know we don't have the date yet, but just to talk about where we're headed on that maybe at the end of tonight's meeting. So that's where we are. So I'm happy. Yes.
Just to clarify one thing, Richard was then saying in terms of responding to requests, but there is a subcommittee that he's part of, which is the zoning options one, and Richard has been the technological engine of that group, but it is new.
Perfect. Thank you for clarifying that. So that's right. So yes,
On this map here, north of 128 at the upper.
yeah, please.
Upper right-hand corner.
Just leave like a little gap in the six, but yes, come on up.
Is listed as excluded.
Yes.
It belongs to Gordon College. Gordon College is anxious to develop it.
So we would need to then talk to HLC about that. Certainly on the public side, realize they're private education, there'll be private educational land, which is excluded. On the public side, it has to be in the process of disposition for housing in order to be counted. I don't know, and we'd have to talk to HC about how they wanted to do.
This is something that's.
If they moved the portion, a portion's not developable. A portion is, but if they moved the portion that was developable to a for-profit entity,
By the time you submitted your zoning.
whenever the deadline was, then would we be okay?
We'd have to ask.
Okay.
I would say the best thing to do for tonight is to identify those parcels. And then I've got something to show HLC and ask them about.
I just mention this because the person who has explored it isn't here.
Right,
Not
okay,
that it's messy.
okay. So then when we come up here, show me those parcels, I'll outline them. Madge is taking notes too, so we can make sure that we ask that question. And any other questions like that that I can answer, I can make a nice list and approach HLC. They are in the midst of reviewing rapid transit communities now. Because I've done a lot of
Everybody's here.
Exactly. So we may not be as quick to get a response as we normally are. They're usually pretty good, but I think this next month is gonna
January might be
pretty
better.
tight. Exactly. But we can at least build our list, right?
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think it'd be good to start at least with the planning criteria.
sure.
So I'm gonna throw out the first one, which is we want to protect the commercial businesses in the area.
gonna suggest, and some people disagree with me if they want before you put it on the list, but I think we want to be as least disruptive to the current zoning as possible. In other words, try to get it to.
Why don't we get them all on the board and then we can not only discuss them, cross things off, we can modify them, we can also prioritize them, so.
I would like to go ahead and write that one down. I want not to, not to put buildings that were built before the 20th century in the multi-family by right.
So you want to protect the historic building.
I want to push that. Every building that was built before 1900, with the exception of Stanley's Garage.
Right.
So why don't you do slash the historic district?
I'm looking at that.
Both of those.
Historic district's confusing because the historic district is a tiny part.
Right, right.
So I don't think historic district really describes what you're trying to get at. I'm gonna be a bit of a Grinch and contest too. I don't think, why do we care about disrupting current zoning? That may be something we want to think about as we get to the near end of the process, but it doesn't sound to me like an objective. I mean, it doesn't, what we're trying to do is make, in general, is to make this as favorable to the town as possible, to preserve our town character as much as possible. What we do with zoning and whether it's close or not, I don't think we can even think about that.
Well, but I disagree, Richard, because if you, our current zoning is almost qualifies. And you're gonna have a much better chance of getting things passed if you're not making massive changes.
Well, then.
And so if you're just tweaking the existing zoning, it's gonna make it easier to get approval.
Maybe we
It's
should,
not gonna get through.
Yes, it
maybe
is.
we should say, do something that we can get the voters to approve.
Right.
Well, that's a good point.
I mean, that's the objective.
Maybe that's too blatant.
That's eminently practical.
Yeah.
And who will be the genius on our staff who will decide that?
You,
Even more broadly, our main objective is to comply with the law.
yes,
Yeah.
But that's an important.
And I would say in the least intrusive manner. I mean, the minimum
I
requirement.
feel that way.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's shared.
Yeah.
I
I'm
don't
gonna
know.
just keep those as two split things, right? You've
Yeah.
got those both on
Yeah.
there, so.
One of the things that comes up all the time when people talk about zoning is the issue of affordability and making more affordable housing in town.
So can I run that over and say, we'd like to encourage housing that the town.
Ah,
But you know, that's a broader category, so I'm gonna add in some.
I think we're getting off. I
Yeah.
love affordability. I actually became the landlord for 7 affordable tenants, although I'm not legally affordable.
Right.
I'm all in favor of affordable. I'm also in favor of social things, doing things the town needs. We got a statute
Right.
to deal with here.
We can't be going too broad.
Yeah, we can't be
Well-
social scientists
Right.
here. That's not our,
But that's
I don't
what
think
the
that's
law
fair.
is.
well, no, but it's part of the approval thing. Every person I've spoken to about it mentions, well, you know, they'll accept some change if they think the change will allow more modern housing. So it's really an important part of, I think.
But I think we have to distinguish between the state 80% of AMI versus we.
By affordable, I
Right,
don't
right.
mean technically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was going to
that's
ask what you were saying, added more moderate.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna throw out one that I don't think I agree with, but let's throw it. Which is that we want to minimize the number of new units that would be built.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
Put that on there.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
there's a
Well, there's
hot
another,
potato right
Wow.
there.
Yeah. This is not to be passed on to the state.
This is public hearing.
Every meeting is recorded. It's not local cable.
There's a whole issue to Chris's point. I mean, I don't have the numbers with me or in my head, but there are a number of multifamily 3 or greater units in town. And so there is an issue about, somehow preserving, you don't want to knock down things, that you already have. You want to keep those in some way. So there's preservation of the existing multifamily units as part of that.
What about just playing off the idea of new units not being built? What if it was something like a conversion? Say you have a large house and you allowed a conversion up to 4 units, up to 5 units of the existing house.
In the general district, we already allow it up to 3 units.
I thought you
By
did,
right.
yeah. So the question then
Yeah.
becomes, does it make sense to make it more? Is 3 units enough?
Yeah,
Some of
right.
this we'll find with the math,
Right.
but some of that is also conceptual.
I don't think we can find that that's achievable.
Sarah, help me out. In terms of the existing zoning, it's 3 units by right, but is it
General
also in the general district? Is it also 2 building, if the lot size, 2 buildings?
You can have 2 buildings of 2 apartments, but that's by special permit,
That's by special permit,
Yeah.
not by right.
right?
Okay. That's
And you have the parking component, but the problem is if they're using 1,000 square foot per unit, that would mean you can only convert a 3,000 square foot house, and that's not what we have in the general district.
right.
We're converting smaller,
Right.
well, we're not converting a lot, but it's generally smaller than 3,000
I'd
square.
like to propose that we want to minimize the impact on current residents, both from parking and traffic.
I guess I have a question about the preserving existing multifamily. And some of that is relatively new and not as dense as it might be. Thinking of Desmond Avenue.
I don't see going after preserving multifamily as being a viable way. I mean, when we want to protect older houses, we protect older houses. If you want to protect styles, we protect styles, but you can't get to 15 units per acre by making existing housing stock 3 family. You just can't do it. It doesn't work anywhere. It's in the district. So it will take more than that.
When you say it doesn't work,
I disagree.
Well,
with you.
yeah. Me
you
too.
mean physically or for the model?
Well, in model.
For,
I mean, if you multiply the number of units per parcel.
It depends.
you
on-
can build 3 units on a 3,000 square foot parcel without 40% coverage. You could build a 1,200 square foot footprint, which gives you 200 square feet for stairs, and then 1,000 for each level. 1,000 square feet on 3 stories.
The 1,000 would include the circulation space, just so you know.
Oh, okay, so you can have,
Yeah, so when you're
Okay.
creating the building
So
volume,
you can have
you're just
1,000.
dividing the building volume
Okay.
by 1,000.
so you can have a 1,000 square footprint, which fits in our zoning down to a 3,000 square foot lot, and our lots are supposed to be 6,000.
Right, but if we're talking about outside the district, we're talking about building inside the existing envelope, and basically, if you're not destroying the structure, does anybody really think you're gonna get to 15 units per acre by changing existing structures into 3 families?
But if we want to minimize the number of units we actually create. we should do that.
Right.
All I'm getting at is, I
It doesn't
don't,
make much difference whether you tear down what exists and build something, or whether you take what exists and make it denser in terms of the number of new units.
Well, but I think that goal 8 there is a worthy goal to minimize the number of new units built. And in order to do that, you have to preserve what you've got.
No, you can tear down what you've got and replace it with something denser.
Yeah, your question is your net new units, right? Are you
Yeah.
using net new versus
Yeah.
new period? So if it's new period, well, net new also, when we start to talk about production, which is obviously different from the zoning, we start to talk of things like land value and existing building value and
Yeah.
interest rates and a couple of other things. And so the likelihood of somebody coming into a community and tearing down an existing three-family in order to build a new three-family is pretty much nil.
Building a six-family where there had been.
Maybe, yes, exactly, something like that,
The
absolutely.
point is, if we create a residential district in a place that doesn't have any residential units now, every new unit that's zoned is a net new unit.
Potentially.
Whereas in the downtown, that would be, it's much less, it's there's probably.
But this doesn't require new units. Just requires.
Capacity.
zoning for-
Yeah, it's capacity, it is just
Well,
capacity.
again, I don't really agree, because if we go to 15 units per acre, anywhere you zone 15 units per acre over a 5 acre minimum zoning area in this town, you're going to significantly increase the density, at least by double.
Well, I've looked at the Elm Street up to Newport Park, and I think there's a way of doing that. Limiting it to four family units in the district, and then doing sub-districts at Newport Park and on Elm Street and Powder House Lane with a greater density.
Well, of course there is, that's my point.
And
When you do
you'll
that,
get to the number we need in town.
and all I'm saying is that when you zone to 15 units over 5 acres, you are going to get replacement building. It's gonna happen.
In the case of Newport Park, it's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's definitely some areas where you would say, "Hmm,
But I was just saying,
Right.
Well, and that goes actually to your point about doing something that helps with the town's needs, right? So I'm working with another client, I can't remember if I mentioned them last night or not, or last meeting or not. But I had a conversation with them last night, and they have an area that they're rezoning for them. It's already significantly built up, but there are about 6 parcels that are very much underutilized. There are 1-story buildings in an area that has 8 to 10-story buildings.
Oh, my God.
And so they are rezoning this area for their MBTA Communities Act because they specifically want these parcels to turn over, right? So to your point, if there are areas in town that could be better used in terms of land use, then maybe that's something that we draw on this map.
So let's make that a goal, which is to improve land use.
Yeah, that's
That's good.
great.
The other issue, I'm sure deserves to be on this list or not, is we need to open our eyes to the fact that not all units need to be 6, 7, 8, 900 square feet. Sometimes a unit which is 500 square feet is a very acceptable unit, and somebody is very happy to have a 1-bedroom or a studio. That's 500. There's a lot of room in 500 square feet. So let's not just say every unit needs to be 1,000 square feet.
no, but I think that.
In fact, you can't, so you
Yeah.
cannot
Right.
actually put restrictions. I agree with you in principle, but you can't put restrictions on the size or the number of
So we
units.
can't say they have to be 1,000.
Exactly,
No,
oh, no,
that's-
the model.
That's just what's calculated in the
Okay.
law.
So the model looks at square footage total and then calculates the number of units.
Basically, we create the building foot, so what the model does is it takes all the parameters, it creates a building footprint.
Yeah.
Adds height, creates a building volume, or FAR, what you're using, creates a building volume, divides that building volume by 1,000. That's the number of units, and the reason we do that is precisely so we don't have to worry about unit mixes. And the fact that different towns would have different standards for unit sizes. So we did some testing with other people who work in the environment. We all pretty much agreed that 1,000 was going to be a reasonable number.
Including common areas.
Exactly, it's just,
things
it's
like
just
that,
1,000 on
which
that.
makes sense.
Mhm.
I guess my point here is that there may be a first grade teacher in Manchester or somebody who works for the town or so, who would be delighted to have a 500 square foot,
Mhm.
1-bedroom apartment that they can walk to.
The word.
That's gonna be the development.
That's a,
Yeah,
sure, and you know
I
what?
mean, it's nothing.
A smart developer is gonna say, sure.
It's like we had 2.
But we can talk about housing types, right? We can
Yes.
talk about the 3 families, the 4 families,
Mhm.
the, 3-story garden apartment, the 4-story garden apartment, all the way up to whatever the highest you want to do in a particular community, right? So we can talk about
We
those.
can also limit the maximum number per lot, correct?
Maximum number of units per lot, yes,
Yeah.
you can do that as well, yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'd also like not to make the SHI any worse.
Okay, yeah. That's,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Don't make the SHI.
Subsidized housing
Housing
inventory.
inventory list worse. In other words, let's not go backwards.
We're going to
Yeah.
go backwards at 10%. For sure.
But at 20%.
At 20%, we might, but that would require a fiscal analysis.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
And it's not gonna
Is
work
that-
on the small lots.
is that extra charge?
That is extra charge, unfortunately, I don't do them, but our kid, we didn't put that in our scope.
Yeah.
We did put that in our
Yeah,
scope,
I
yeah,
can do
no,
that.
yes, that's part of it.
As a possible
I'll double check
extension of the work.
Yes, I think there were two possible extensions to the work, and that was one of them, and RKG, our partner, does the FAs, so they're our partner on this job. So, that's right, I forgot to put that as the extension.
I mean, even aside from this meeting and everything else, I'd like to go ahead with that. I don't know how we decide to do that, because I assume it is extra money.
Yeah, it was, we gave a range, I think, for both of the options.
Yeah.
The other
So
one
one
was
thing we
design
could do is
guidelines.
ask the Affordable Housing Trust to fund it.
We're not going to block it. No, I'm just gonna put EFA, just so we all have a forwarded EFA question.
Like exclamation mark.
Greg is the hiring authority, so.
One of the things people often talk about wanting to preserve in use is the character.
Yeah,
Right. And part of what I think that means, and I'd love to hear other people explain it exactly. Certainly it has to do with design standards, but it also has to do with preserving the variety of materials and shapes and all of it. So somehow continuing preserving the variety that there is.
so
in
that
town.
design character, but in
Yeah,
your
yeah.
case, that variety of design as opposed to a standardization.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Preserve the whimsy.
And I think that other add-on was the design standards. So,
Form-based zone.
for the form-based, yeah,
It was specifically.
that's right, which is where we get into the housing. Type of stuff. All right, we've got 4 more to think about, not that you can't do more than 4, but I have 4 more spaces. But, oh, sorry. Angled.
I can't.
Oh, sorry.
Can you make number 2 for me?
2 is least disruptive to current zoning as possible.
I'm gonna look towards the story. What did we write down?
Protect pre-20th century. Except Stanley's garage.
Hey, when I write it down, I write it down.
It's the oldest
I guess I-
business in Manchester, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pre-20th century takes out everything from 1900 to 1950, which is the part.
Right, I think it's problematic.
What we'll do is we'll move it to where the MCC is. Then move their building.
Well, what
So
I'm
then I'm
trying
gonna
to
put
get
it
at
in
is,
1900 to 1950.
I'm just trying, I mean, I think.
Yeah,
it was-
maybe
Yeah.
think about.
I would say pre-19th century.
Oh,
Maybe
right.
some of the newer stuff is what you-
Pre-19th century makes more sense.
But I don't, no, there's a lot of 19th century stuff that's nuts.
Well, can we just,
A lot
There's a
of,
lot that's
I
not.
mean, a lot of 20th century stuff. It's like, man,
See, this is.
1925.
But different people.
Do you have a
would
demolition?
prefer
permit?
to have.
No.
No,
Okay, I was gonna say the demolition delay bylaw usually does like
100 years.
100 or 75 or 50 or something like that, so it's like a rolling timeline, if you see what I mean.
that's what I was,
Yeah.
that's what I was
That's what they're looking at. is 100
yeah,
years.
yeah. Okay, fine.
That was
Which
going
is-
down.
which is-
So you'd make it
7 years
100 or
ago.
75.
so that actually, let's put that down as a goal. Demolition delay.
No, I don't know that.
We can always cross it out. I want all your ideas on here. Right?
No, you don't want to do that.
I don't want all your ideas on here.
One of my goals is that even though the statute requires us to look at the half-mile radius, and obviously that's a huge part of what we're doing. I don't want residents to think that we are focusing solely on that area,
Okay.
without opening our eyes to all of the other possibilities that might benefit the town.
Okay, great.
I don't know how to say that. in a
Broad,
short way.
broad perception.
And all the
Beyond.
opportunities within the circle too, because we've mostly focused on the general
I'm
district.
not sure I understand. I mean, were we ever thinking that there would be more than the minimum inside the circle?
That's not what I was saying.
Oh, okay.
It's the impact on all of the areas
I
of
see.
town. I don't want people who live downtown to think we're only looking at that. Sorry, we're not even looking everywhere else. Because people are worried about that. So I want to make sure that we look at.
So are you suggesting that we should be considering more areas in the single family district?
I think it would be a mistake for us to leave the residents with the impression that we're not looking at the entire town,
You mean the entire, I'm still confused. The
The
entire
whole
circle.
the whole town.
But we have to put 19 acres inside the
I
circle.
Yes,
understand
but she's
that.
just saying we need to look at the entire town and see where the opportunities are.
And we will be
Whether-
doing that
Whether
tonight.
they, but I think, let's clarify with Sue. But I think if I'm hearing you right, it also means looking not just in the general district, but looking at areas that are currently single family.
Well, since everything is not general district, it is single.
Right.
Right,
Or it's the commercial district, the LCD.
right.
In other words, instead of trying to put all 39 acres within the circle.
Exactly. We don't want people
We'll
to
spread the
think,
pain.
Yeah.
Well,
well,
I
for
think
the
I-
opportunity.
I think I agree with you, but I don't think there's ever been, I doubt that anyone has the impression we're gonna put more than the 19 acres inside
Then
the
we
circle.
should put that on the list.
Right, I
Well,
think,
I'm trying to clarify,
Yeah.
maybe I agree, maybe I don't, I'm trying to clarify, are you suggesting that we look outside the general district in this inner circle? I mean, there has been a lot of discussion about how concentrated we make these selections and how much they gravitate towards the downtown. And I do hope we look more broad. It contradicts, goes against, as you, it goes against ours. Yeah.
The half mile goes, what, if you go to the south, east, it goes a lot further than we look.
It's half single family.
Right,
I have another criteria.
okay.
Wait, did we finish this?
Yeah, I
No,
just want
wanna
to clarify something. So remember, it's the percentage of the total district, not just the 19 acres. So your requirement for the station area applies to the total district. If you go more, that makes a difference.
Is that what you were saying? Look
I
beyond.
have,
the half
I have
mile.
looked beyond the half mile.
perfect.
You had another criteria.
Yeah, I'm just, the thing I'm concerned about is to looking at residential areas where there's large lots where developers can come in with great big projects.
So that again depends on how you zone it, but yes, I
Right.
think that's so.
So you want to minimize large development projects.
Yeah, minimize large development, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah,
Except in the LCD where large development would be a good idea.
in a residential.
Right, yeah, we minimize, yeah, like.
Or give a definition of large, which we also have. at the
In a
top.
residential district.
In existing residential district.
Yeah.
Well, so what does that really mean? We've got large lots in the general district. Are we suggesting that none of those will be used?
We can put a cap on the number of units to.
Not if you're gonna get to 15.
You can, Richard, if you isolate where you go a little denser.
So what's the difference between selecting, I can play devil's advocate here. but what's the difference between selecting some areas in single family districts and parcels, which in many cases are smaller than some of the larger parcels in the general district?
I'm looking at things like you take Elm Street, which is not a very nice area. That could be more dense.
Sure, and I'm comparing the fact that
Could be
each,
more dense.
I'm trying to speak to this, which is that we want to prevent, what does that mean exactly? we've got large areas where we have 1 and 2 acre single family lots, which we haven't even discussed using.
Right.
And we have large lots, we have 4, 5, 6 acre lots inside the general district, which, you know, if you're gonna get them to 15 units per acre, are going to encourage larger developments.
I think it depends where they are.
Well, let's say what, let's define what large.
Thank you, I was going to ask that question, what do you mean by large? Because that's going to vary by person.
More than 50 units?
That's large.
I was gonna say more than 20.
Yeah,
No, but if you look at the old cricket building, you could put more than 20 units in there without it overwhelming.
I think it would be great.
How
It's not
many
like-
units? Does anybody have a list of how many units are on Desmond Street? In that development, and how many units?
29,
29?
I believe so. On Desmond Street?
Yes.
Yeah, it's 29.
That for the affiliations development.
Yeah,
And what about on Summer Street? How many units are on?
Which Summer?
Brook Street?
Brooke,
Well, I wasn't asking about
There's
that.
21 in the big building. Townhomes
oh,
are much smaller.
12, so
And what's the total though?
it's 29. Oh, no,
The
30.
chat, no,
29 and 12.
down twice.
Yeah.
29 and 12.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's
41.
41. Yeah, so 41, I mean,
So you're so just to clarify, you're all defining large by the number of units.
Right,
Not by
rather
the
than
height or the
acres.
massing, and that's one of the reasons I'm glad we're talking about
Right,
this, because
right.
that makes a difference.
but I also think it depends on where it is.
Right.
I mean, large. You
How
know,
about targeting large development to appropriate sites?
that's good,
yeah,
that's good.
Well, that's good, and I don't think it means much.
Well, let's put it on there. So after I write this down, I'm going to
And that.
give you an example and see what you think of it.
I've got one more suggestion.
Yeah.
Which is no more than 4 stories within the circle.
Well, I don't.
of course, what's the most we've got currently?
We're-
4.5.
We're,
4.5?
in looking at.
Older buildings, yeah, there are more.
I think it depends on whether you're on the street or not, because one of the things we've contemplated with Newport Park is could you do 3 stories at the street and then the next layer be 4 and then the next layer be 5, because there's no houses around.
For the by right portion of zoning, which would do for the MBTA,
Right.
I would not like to see anything over 3.
Well, I think it depends on where it is.
Well,
So you just gave the example I wanted to ask you about in terms of how you think about development, which is I saw one recently where they had a series of townhomes, you know, the line along the street. And back behind the townhomes where you could see it from the air, which is how I was looking at it, but you wouldn't be able to see it from the street, was the 4-story, much larger building. It was built up, in their case, it was built up against the highway. So the townhomes related to the street, larger building bit went up to the highway, and that's why I was interested that you were defining large by the number of units rather than by the building type or size, so.
I think we have to be creative, and I think just arbitrarily restricting it to a certain number of stories. I think we have to look if there's some districts where we can be more generous in a small area. And where it's not visible to people.
I don't think you could get a unanimous vote of this committee on any of those, so.
Well, what I was going to suggest is to keep all of these in mind.
Yeah.
And come to the map. Let's start sketching out some districts and then start thinking about as we're drawing places or looking at areas. You can put question marks, you can put scribbles. This map is not supposed to be pretty when it's done. It's supposed to be really messy. We can start thinking about, you know, hey, did this district meet one of these principles, or does it violate one of these principles? Or are we getting more information now that we're looking at what's on the ground? Because I think that'd be helpful. And we can start either with the entire town or with more concentrated areas, whichever you think would be more helpful to discuss.
I don't know, he's got a gun.
So that's down the badge.
So large, I want to go back to large. for a
Yes,
second.
yeah.
So talking about 40 units.
Don't know, and we're talking about some-
We're talking about something that's going to disrupt the neighborhood.
Right.
So I'm going
So,
to just circle
Sandy,
lines that it's
yeah.
undefined in both.
If you think about Connor House Lane,
Yeah,
I don't know how tall that building is now.
it's 3 stories.
Right. And would it be disastrous to have that be 4 stories? And be rebuilt and be nice?
Well, no, that's in basically no more than 4 stories, 5 stories, I think. I mean, I'd sort of agree with Anna about that. I think 4.
5 stories with a step back.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, this is me asking you.
Yeah,
for
yeah,
answers.
So
I suggestion.
for senior housing, it's much more environmentally sound to make a taller building.
Yeah.
Can we run quickly through the criteria again?
Sure, and you want me to read them out?
Yeah.
The handwriting, okay. So we have protect commercial downtown, least disruptive to current zoning if possible, as possible. Protect pre-20th century, except the garage, with the caveat of maybe 1900 to 1950. Town meeting approval, comply with law, more affordable or moderate income, encourage housing that meets town needs, minimize the number of new units built, minimize the impact on current residents, preserving existing multifamily, improve land use, don't make SHI any worse, question mark or exclamation point on EFA, preserve the variety of the design characteristics, demolition delay, look beyond half mile, minimize large to be defined development in existing residential district, targeting large, again, to be defined development to appropriate sites, and those 2 definitions of large can be different depending on the criteria, and no more than 4 stories within the circle, meaning that half mile radius. Did we miss anything?
Yes.
I can slip more in here.
There is a whole question that arises about, I don't know if it's minimizing, but keeping whatever additional development is allowed within the constraints of our existing infrastructure.
I'm gonna move 19 up here out of order.
So within sewer, water, supply, capacity, school.
So, but the state law doesn't.
Yeah, oh, brother, yeah. As somebody who has lots of candles in her house.
How can we consider that? We have to zone for, I mean, I suppose depending upon where we zone it, the maximum number of units that we could get, minus the units that are already there, equals new units. So that goes back to minimizing the units.
So the section 348 law says that capacity is a valid reason not to be able to build the units. So if you don't have a sewer system, we can zone it, but it won't get built.
You would assume that the developer is going to have to either work with the town to add that capacity, or they're going to have to do a small package treatment plant, or a shared septic, or any of the other things, but yes, that's part of the production
Those things, but
side.
it's not in the handle of school.
Yeah, it's the production side, it's not the zoning side. However, you can choose, to your point, to say, hey, we've got this area that has sewer, we'd like to focus our district in the sewer area, or I'm interested in the electricity. Or, we have town water in this area, we would prefer to put our zone as close to the existing town water as possible. Roads is another issue in some communities, is put it near the existing.
Parking, everybody's favorite.
Parking, and parking is an interesting one because parking actually impacts the model. So that is one of the things to remember as you're requiring parking, that will have an impact on your building footprint.
But it doesn't seem to be impacting, because we only have the 40% coverage in downtown now.
Right.
Parking doesn't seem to be an issue,
I take the parking way up, made no difference.
Yeah. because we have.
That's
open
because
space.
above 2 spaces per unit. It's complex, but it has a more significant impact than you're going to, then you may have something else in there that is offsetting.
I think it's using the setback.
Yeah, setbacks are not actually used.
Coverage,
It's coverage that's used. It's not
it's a
setback.
structural coverage.
We collect the setbacks, but we don't use them in the model itself.
Yeah.
A structural coverage, there's another coverage factor there.
Right.
Yeah, it's
Total
building coverage,
impervious, but
yeah,
it's
it's
just
building
building
coverage is
coverage,
what you need
Because
to.
parking can be pervious or
Well,
impervious.
I take it way up.
Well, can you talk a little bit about how the model handles parking? Because that is one way that the current zoning manages to constrain development.
Yeah. So let's just say this is the footprint of your parcel.
Yep.
So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to remove excluded land, any excluded land on the parcel. So now your building envelope, instead of being from here to here, is now from here to here. The next thing we're going to do is take out open space, which is a minimum of 20%. If you have a larger requirement, we use that. But the minimum of 20% is because not everybody uses open space, so that accounts for setbacks. Because trying to model all the parcels for setbacks is not going to happen. So now your building envelope is here. The next thing that happens is if there's an additional restriction on building coverage, that's going to factor in. So a little bit more off there. And then the parking, it's assumed that it's going to be surface parking because in most of the communities, it will be surface parking. So the surface parking is taken off. So this is now your building envelope here after you've removed all of the percentages for the other. This is what gets turned into 3 dimensions, whether you use height or possibly FAR, and then we divide by 1,000.
Oh, wait, but you're, so you're.
FAR is floor area ratio.
We don't know that.
Yeah, so you don't have to worry about it. I'm happy to define it for you, but you don't have it in the moment. It's a ratio between the lot area and the gross square footage of the building. And it is another method. Really, you should have either building coverage or FAR. Some communities have both, and then you actually can't do anything most of the time. So, but
Please help me understand the parking
Yes.
effect on the second and third stories of the building. Because if you've taken it away, and that's, you define the envelope that way.
good question. So we've got our building envelope here. Now,
You could have the
If you-
second story go over.
so this is the difference between zoning production and the model, right? The model, we had to create certain calculations to make this work. So normally what I would have done for a build out analysis is I would have said, okay, I've got my building envelope, I can fit almost exactly this many units, they will require this many parking. Oh, I don't have enough parking, that means I have to share the bill. We start getting into an infinite loop of changing the units, changing the parking. So the way the model does is it assumes a percentage of land based on the number of parking spaces per unit. I consulted on it, but I didn't set up those with somebody else who has went through and did a bunch of calculations to see what would work. And I don't remember what the ratios are, but basically by putting in 1.5 spaces per unit or 1 space per unit or 2 spaces per unit, it triggers that percentage reduction. So the number of stories really doesn't matter. It's just assumed based on your parking ratio of spaces per unit.
So a townhouse with a garage.
No, because you're starting to get into building types, there's no way the model could model individual building types. So think of the model as the best estimate. It's not going to get as precise as a real world build out, and it doesn't need to for the purposes of compliance. It needs to make sure that 177 cities and towns are all using the same calculations to demonstrate compliance. So we tried to get as close as
So
possible.
we limit today in the general district coverage by structures to 40% of the lot.
Right,
That means you have enough other space on your lot for the parking,
yes,
for a lot of parking.
And we use 40% in all these models.
Right,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
parking
okay.
doesn't become an issue because we are requiring so much.
Extra space.
yeah,
extra
if you were
space.
doing building coverage at 80%, which is typical for a more urbanized downtown. You may have some parcels at 80%.
Yeah,
but it's
oh,
not
yeah.
zoned that way. You might have some at 90 and you may even have a few at 100, but let's just use
Yeah.
80. If you use at 80%, the parking might start to be a little bit
Right,
more of an
yeah.
issue, but you, as you say, you've got enough room. Yeah.
Okay.
So can I add another criteria?
Yeah, sure.
No, there are only that many.
I did that, sorry, I created a precedent. I did add a 19, so you can put 20 in there. What have you got?
To encourage residential development above commercial.
Ah, now we're gonna get to our mixed use discussion, again, aren't you?
Yeah.
So in existing commercial.
Commercial
Right.
districts.
But if you look out Summer Street, for example. There's a lot of, that's area, at least part that I'm thinking about is area A. There's a lot of commercial.
You know, we went to cricket building.
I mean, like, yeah, like the vet and the.
Right.
Yep.
That's
So existing commercial zoning districts versus existing areas that have commercial in them. Okay, versus use.
Yeah.
Right.
I think we've gotten a little general there, because I think what you said commercial.
So.
Well, what is the commercial you want to preserve? Well, the use, I suppose,
Yeah.
for sure.
Dennis.
But what about the
That's-
cricket? I mean, we do have some commercial areas that are currently commercial where I'm guessing there's difference of opinions for it.
Well, no one seems to be complaining about it.
Right, well, it's not a question of complaining, I mean, it's a question of whether. or
Do
not
we care whether they're residential or
use.
commercial, like the cricket? Not sure we care.
The old
Talking about
cricket.
the
The old cricket
old,
building.
right,
Not the old cricket.
well, the one on Summer Street.
They're both on some.
Not the one down.
No, the cricket,
One that's the Verizon.
Right.
There you
one
go.
that's near the Verizon and the vet is in an old cricket building.
All right, we're going to have to move to the map soon, because you're going to have me completely turned around as to which cricket building. So, anything else you want to add to this before we go geographic?
Right.
Let's come on in. Do you want to start with Old Town first, or do you want to start with downtown first? That's not smaller. Start small, work out, okay, let's flip this over. And then while you all come around and orient yourself, I'm just gonna grab a sip of water.
I would start by drawing a half mile radius.
We have
And say, everything inside this half mile is multifamily as of right, period. Period,
Wow.
Do you know how many that gives us?
live with it.
Gives us over 1,000.
I know. I know.
But it doesn't give you 15 units for it.
Fine.
The stars are, the stars are the,
Historic.
historic, yeah, so we're in the
So under my program.
Yeah.
Everything is multifamily, as of right. All of this, everything.
This is great. You're running for a fortune.
Yeah.
Should I have put ownership on this one?
No. Now, I'm not doing this to feather my own nest, believe it or not. But you know, if you started there, it would be very interesting.
So these are the, as I understand, Jimmy, who is somebody you haven't met yet, made our maps for us. These are the districts that were subgroup tested. The shaded, the gray shaded are the groups that the MIT class tested, or the areas that MIT class
Yeah.
tested. And then you do still see some of the zoning borders, so if we need to jump to the larger legend, we can do it, but that starts us off.
wait a minute, let me be sure I understand. So the gray area, so is this gray area?
Yes, that would be.
That would
tested
be
by
more
board.
about the MIT. And then there's another bit,
Another group here.
and up here.
Yeah, they.
MIT group wasn't too concerned about historical house.
But apparently not, looking at the stars.
Well, and students, I mean, I
Yeah,
have students myself, so
Kids.
they're doing it to find out, you know, an academic principles, yeah. And that's not to work with students, so it's just a point that it's sort of like class, yeah.
Well, they're coming. And that's useful.
Yeah, absolutely, so feel free to grab a marker, these are to be marked up, so if the particular buildings that you all have been talking about. Areas you want us to test, areas you don't want us to test, feel free to grab a marker and mark things up, just mark it right clearly, so we can recognize it when we come
That's
out.
the cemetery. So this is the cricket.
The old
building.
cricket.
The old cricket building.
See,
But then Anne had an old.
Yeah, no, this is
That's
new.
new.
This is the new
The
building.
old cricket,
The new old cricket building.
Wait, where's the old cricket building?
Oh, well, that's.
Curious.
It's
down right here.
This first thing here.
Oh.
commercial, wait, which one was the,
But we don't want to mark you.
But we don't need to.
We don't want to mark.
I just need to know what you're referring to. So
Right.
It's not that we're gonna do anything necessarily for MBTA, it just helps me orient. When you talk about something being next to it, I know what you're talking about.
Now, of course, the cricket doesn't exist in that
No.
building now.
Okay, that's my.
It exists downtown.
Yeah.
So I should take a left at the oak tree that fell down
Yeah,
30 years
exactly.
ago.
Right, exactly.
I love it, you know, okay.
All right, so there was where's that? So,
Well, this is Newport Park.
Okay.
right, so there was the.
And this is the area, this green area.
150A.
Mhm.
Where it seemed to me would create sub-districts, a sub-district in Newport Park. What did I say?
Just draw an outline.
That's
Well, we've
150,
got
that's
it
one
out.
of the
The 150A.
So,
Right.
so it was all of the 150A.
But then I thought this could be a sub-district.
Okay, yeah.
And where's, this could be a sub-district.
All right, circle that out, it's the potential
Yeah.
sub-district, absolutely.
Oh, you probably want Elm Street, you're trying to, you're trying to include the powder house,
This is the
right?
powerhouse work.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would be a sub-district.
So you have-
Right, I can cut it off, or what?
Yeah,
Cut it off
Yeah,
here, yeah.
okay.
and, yeah, I think so.
And then this would be, the whole thing would be a district. And in this whole district, you could limit to 3 units per lot, except for in these 2 areas and make it more dense.
Okay.
So you wouldn't
Good.
get big development in here.
All right, so. 3 minutes.
3 or 4, yeah.
Well,
Wait, what's the size of the lot?
Yeah, the way,
6,000
yeah, exactly.
6,000.
So it's the existing.
No. Yeah, it doesn't matter for the compliance model, it's an existing lot. No matter what its size.
But the zoning,
Yeah.
No, it's.
so, okay, so the zoning has to be one thing, and then it's,
6,000.
right, and then the model tests. it.
Right, so
Instead of-
if a lot's under 6,000, it's excluded.
It's excluded, so then, okay.
You can't get any.
Yeah.
And there's only 2 under 6,000 in this whole group.
Huh, okay, yeah, that was surprising.
Yeah,
actually,
so
how-
it's
How large.
It's kind of like a
the lots were.
non-issue.
Yeah, but that minimum lot size, you can do a lot with to preserve.
Yes,
Yeah,
yep,
Yeah, and that is an important.
And
thing
then
in
if you
some
have-
cases, people are zoning.
Because, well,
2 ones
they were
there.
just-
I want to spin it out for thinking about how that would work though, because if you say it's 6,000 and whatever is under 6,000, the current zoning would apply, which is it needs a special permit.
yeah, but it's not
Is
gonna
that-
be it's not gonna be in the compliance, it's not gonna be counted as a compliance.
I understand that, but I'm just asking about how it would actually work
If we do overlay districts,
if we do overlay.
then the existing zone is correct.
Applies.
Yeah.
Emily, can you tell me, what happens when a parcel straddles the half-mile zone? Does it count the entire parcel inside? It seemed to.
think it says
I
the
will
center
double
point.
check on that, I can look at, the acreage in the model.
Yeah,
and see
I
what
thought
comes
it
up.
did, but
Yeah.
it'd be good to know.
Yeah.
There are a lot of acres there.
Why is this
18
this is
acres.
Yeah, I was thinking.
Yeah. That may have been where it was in the GIS.
Yes, well, but here.
Yeah, because it really is
Okay.
this here.
Yeah.
You can't get on the train here, you get on the train.
It's to the parcel line, I think what
Yeah.
it is they didn't tease parcel line rather than to the platform. I remember an early discussion on that, I'd have to check and see if that was actually.
I think we saw 2 different versions coming to us. One was here and one was there.
I have it on my laptop. Let me get
Oh.
it back.
It's 19 acres,
Oh, you got it.
18.9.
18.
Well, is that the one that goes up the hill?
Yeah,
Yeah, the one that goes up the hill is, this one is not.
That does not
There's
go.
two. This one is,
oh, this is the one.
The one-
This is 140?
this is 150.
150.
This is 150.
Now,
This is
this is
150A, and this is
150A.
150.
Yes, right.
Oh, 150A is the somewhat smaller one,
Yeah.
the more conservative, but it's still got a lot.
The 150 was the,
150, no,
was the 18.9.
I think that's correct.
acres.
Uh,
So that's what I looked at, I didn't realize what was in it.
wait a minute. I have it here.
Chris, just so you know, we're blocking.
150A was
To
the
open up every now and then.
18.75.
So there's
Okay.
more.
Yeah,
Yeah, 150 was huge.
yes, it
Oh,
was huge. So, okay, so I wanna understand. this
So
is-
maybe we want.
What's G one
150 is
hundred?
27.
We're lying around here.
Yeah, okay.
Well, maybe.
But is this,
Maybe not.
was G one hundred one of our samples?
Which see,
All of
that
these are
is
samples.
Ah,
with the house,
G one
you
hundred.
get some dense areas and satisfying.
And full of stars.
What are those stars?
MHA would not satisfy without more lands.
Which one are you talking about?
I guess what you're saying, sorry.
Well, one of the things we're trying to do is redevelop our MHA properties.
Okay.
And based on current zoning, we need more land. But if we were to increase the density here and let some more higher buildings in.
So that's your criteria about doing what
The
is
height.
appropriate for the town.
Right,
with the height
yeah.
you choose, yeah, exactly.
Because they need to put in 20 or so additional units.
So-
You went up in the buildings and there's no house around here, it's all.
Right, so it wouldn't be such a.
Yeah,
This is the amenity package for Newport Park right here. That's what we call it.
But see how what you were just talking about with playing some, you know, making some choices around the density. Allowing something to happen that you're trying to happen. Now we're starting to hit some of the criteria that you
Yeah.
identified. So continuing to think about
Right.
what makes sense.
and then same thing with over here, it's
Yeah.
very dense.
The value of this is that it has very few stars.
This one.
Right, and we cut out the historic.
If you cut
Yeah,
off that
she's
section,
just saying
then
that-
there's no star.
Well,
Yeah.
although,
Actually,
yeah,
Yeah.
we limited it there.
although at 18.75, we are almost there with this one district.
Right,
Yeah.
that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. So if
So
there's
wait,
no-
Are you saying this might work?
Yeah.
No,
Well,
it doesn't
Come
quite,
on, Richard.
it doesn't quite.
If you have two districts with heavier density, I think it works.
What I was trying to point out is that you're gonna find yourself in a bit of a jam. You go to, if this is 18.75 and you've got to do another 5
Yeah.
inside the circle,
You don't have.
that's a problem.
It's
So you
19.
wanna-
we have nine-
Oh, I guess we could,
Originally, you got circle here.
that's 30 acres.
Yeah.
So
But you
is there a
could
reason
also-
to continue
I
to do that?
wait.
Yeah, what if we pick this up? What's
Yeah.
this one? That's a garage.
Yeah.
Yes.
It is in 158. Oh, no, it's
No,
not
it's
in
not.
158.
No.
Really?
Get it?
You
Yeah.
could.
That's a mistake.
Yeah. Cause then that,
That is my mistake.
They call it mobile arms.
All
No,
right,
it's on my model,
The 158.
the garage.
We
At the base of Pine Street.
Yeah,
so we'll
Yes.
go back to ours, because I
Yes,
think
okay.
we were working from the electronic versions, we didn't yet have your sub-districts one.
Okay,
So-
so this is part.
this is in 158.
Okay, well, so, but you could also, I mean, you could try, if you're trying to get a little bit more area to get the 19 and to do it in one thing, you could expand it here.
Yeah, unless there's,
Because Bryce Lane is a whole,
oh, that's true.
Yeah.
yeah, just try it. Yeah,
oh, we cut through somebody's
Oh,
garage.
dear. Half of it. You can always park a small car in one of them.
the Bryce.
Four, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Well,
Yeah, and that would certainly get you the 19 acres that you need within the circle.
And we have to calculate the capacity.
Yes,
And
well,
the density of that, but that gives us more possibility, that's great. All right, we have one possibility, thanks. What else do we want to?
Oh, we're getting There's. There's,
This area here. That's
Yeah,
what we-
all this.
Yeah.
where's the purple here? Is there one of the options
Is
is
your
your
G 100
G1? So that's this.
all the way around.
Yeah, it goes-
Yeah.
There was some overlapping
It
this.
includes the American Legion,
Which is
the
a
town hall parking lot.
But this fine line keeps us for the most part, well, no, you've got historic districts here.
I kind of changed this parcel in here, which is key to using these, because it gets you up to the 5 acres. I just need to hear and understand that one big parcel. How do we deal with that? That's a complicated issue. And what I worry about is that by bringing it into the MBTA zoning constraints, we lose sight of what's really the best thing for the town. What is, I hope we can think about this in terms of what is the best thing for this to be for the town. And then contrast that to what happens if we try to bring it in.
That is a great question. So, that's commercial now.
It's
Right.
commercial,
Yeah,
but
it's
putting
lots of-
residential.
Right,
It's
yeah.
got lots of surface parking.
Woefully underused.
Yeah.
It is, there's no question about that. We all
It
agree
is
with that.
74 spots for the train.
Free.
Free.
Everybody using that. So one of the things I noticed about this, which is really quite interesting, is unlike many communities, you don't have excluded MBTA land right next to your train station. So, you know, there are some communities where it's right on the train stations are excluded.
They just have a right of way.
Yeah, I don't think MBTA on deeds down there.
And so exactly, well, they show up as the green, so that's
Yeah.
why I'm really impressed. So you're worried a lot
They're-
of
they're-
it's commercial.
Wait a minute, maybe we're not an MBTA.
Nice try.
But there is an agreement that I think is close to expiring, or maybe it already expired.
Yeah.
Right, where this property owner had to provide a certain number of T spaces.
But again,
Correct.
not
But that's
zoning.
not, it's not a zoning issue.
And you could do that.
Right.
That's
I mean,
part of it.
Yeah.
I think it's expired, but
It expired.
I'm not I'm not the authority.
All right.
I
so
mean,
it's not
commercial, but I don't know.
I don't know.
Putting residential above it, it's a part of the building, this part of the building is 2.5, 3 stories.
Yes.
But this is only a single story. So putting,
That's a single story.
right, putting residential above that.
So, because you can't do the mandatory mixed use, right? You can't do mandatory commercial on ground floor. Let's go 2 different directions in here. One is you allow the multifamily as of right, that goes multifamily. Is that a horrible thing to lose that commercial?
Yes.
Okay, but that's important.
Yeah, we do a little, well, put on the brakes and understand the excuse. Because I would like to understand, how that- because I did look over the guidelines.
Because you're
and I
assuming
wanted
it's
to
special
direct-
story.
direct the source.
We can do that, but let me just ask the second half of the question.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
is, okay, you
Yes.
don't want it.
It's second
So,
ownership.
quick question, Paul. You answered the first one, right? You do not want that to be all multifamily, you want that commercial.
Yes,
So
correct.
then the second question is,
So we can
there's
count
the
on it.
opportunity in the zoning to say, we're going to do a density bonus for that commercial use. Is that something that is on?
We could do that.
Yes, for sure. Yes.
So now there's always the option that somebody might not take that.
Right,
Right, and that's
So
a
then you
risk.
have to think about how you structure.
You know,
that.
at some point, the free enterprise system has to enter into what's going on in our town.
I don't think so.
Protest. Damn, I'm afraid you were gonna say that.
Because our experience with like developers recently has been so
I
positive.
know, that's right. But wait a minute, developers did all of this. Okay,
No,
yes, they
no,
did.
they didn't do all of that.
Individual.
That was done by, give me a break.
Most of it, that was done by.
I want to be sure we understand the mandatory mixed
You
use.
cannot mandate mixed use in an MBTA district.
I understand that,
Yes.
but there is the unit offset.
There's a unit.
And I want
offset.
to be sure I understand how that
Okay.
works. So we have 585 units is the threshold we have to at least meet.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my understanding of the mandatory mixed use is if we did a mandatory mixed use district and the most we could count toward the unit number that we're trying to reach would be 25% of the 585.
No, 25% of the capacity of the designated mixed use district. You are not creating a new mixed use district. You have to already have a mixed use district.
We do.
You calculate the capacity of that mixed use district, and you take 25%, which is. And you offset your 585 by 25% of the unit capacity of that district. But that district is not your MBTA.
Right,
community.
right.
It doesn't work here.
But that's not, that's not the example they gave in the
So
document.
we don't
Okay,
gain,
I'll look back.
We can't have
we don't gain anything by including. those two districts.
Well, we do, we protect the commercial
No,
number
just-
one.
no,
Wait a second,
no.
wait a second, and you add units. Which means your
Well,
density.
No,
is
you're
reduced.
not, you're not rezoning your mixed use district. It has, your mixed use district has nothing to do with your capacity except acting as an offset. You're not adding multifamily to your mixed use district, you're not adding more
When
mixed
you
use.
said it
that's
offsets your capacity, so let's
Your
just use,
required unit capacity.
right, so that the 585 units,
Yeah,
right, turn into, let's say, 500 or.
Oh, it's not gonna be
450.
No, it'll be
Yes.
no, I'm saying, yes, it reduces that.
It
capacity.
reduces
but not that much.
Shirley, can you just repeat
Well,
for us?
The capacity were 100.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
you just,
that
can
would
you just
be
repeat?
nice.
25 units.
We cannot have mandatory retail in this.
That is correct.
All right, so in the end,
Let's not-
if you want to preserve retail there, you can't make it part of the MBTA zone.
Right,
You
right,
can't,
you can't make
No,
it,
you
and
can't.
you can't make it part of the district.
you can't make it part of the MBTA district.
It won't, it completely goes away from your strategy.
Right,
It's a different strategy.
Well,
It's
but-
not
but-
MBTA zoning.
but it changes the calculation,
I don't
the
think
density numbers.
It's not
does
gonna
it
make
not?
enough
Not
difference.
the
in anyone.
density.
No.
You get, so three things.
Okay,
Geography, unit capacity, which is my gesture for buildings,
Yeah.
don't know the geography. The density is the unit capacity divided by the geography. So you've got three components, then you've got your fourth, which is the zone, but think of it that way. So it will change your unit capacity number, doesn't change your geography number. It doesn't change your density number, you still have to meet those, but it does reduce the amount of unit.
So we still need the 15
You
units.
still need an average of 15 units per acre, you still need the number of acres that will get you there with the minimum.
So,
And if we want to preserve retail in that parcel,
If you want to be 100% certain of preserving the commercial in that parcel, don't make it part of the MBTA. You can rezone it to have mixed use under a different zoning.
Right, yes.
If you want it, so that's a whole. other
that's the point. I'm not trying to
So
say
what
we
you're
have a
saying
zone.
But what I'm hearing you say, so I'm gonna put a little X right here.
Yeah.
You do not want this parcel.
so is this, that whole truth of this,
So that's my next question to you, is what do you not want to change?
I don't wanna change this, and I don't wanna change
You
that.
don't wanna change anything in the town.
No, that's right, that's not. You're talking historical.
I'm with Ann. I think this was, look, this was a venture we took.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. It doesn't give you much. It
Yeah.
wipes out good stuff,
but this,
particularly when you don't have this anymore. Now you're stuck over here and you don't have 5 acres.
And I'm guessing that you don't want, there's nothing that you can attach this to, that's supposed to look like.
This will be the order.
right, without bumping into.
At least
And
not
so
a
let's-
little ways around.
Let's go on over
You can
here.
go this way, you can go this way,
yeah,
We could go that way, yep,
yeah, you
absolutely.
can go this way to get the 5 acres.
You can't come over here. I don't,
Yeah,
You can
this
cross.
is Crosby's and this is the hardware store.
Yeah.
I don't think that gets you to 5.
In this area, oh, this area.
Well, this
This
is
is
excluded
excluded.
land.
This
So
is,
it will give
you're
you-
blocked here.
It will get you your total acreage. You can use excluded land for your acreage. but
Correct.
it
Assuming
changes
that
your
zone is
calculation of density.
Yeah.
so why is this the parking lot this way?
Yeah,
It's, the
But-
town owned.
but the town could say it's developable and
Yeah,
then it could
the
be
town would
included.
have to be in the actual process of disposing of it for housing by the time you suppose it's submitted. to
Okay, great, get on it.
You don't have anything else on your plate.
We could think of the 5 acres that way.
Yeah,
It would mean zoning the rest of this
It would
more
be
densely.
or another area, or if
Or
you're
another
picking it
area.
up here,
Yep.
or something like that.
So they'll
Yeah.
probably want to cut off. Right, so let's.
But the question is, do we need that if we can
I
get the
don't think
19
we
acres
do.
in this area?
Yes, I agree.
No, except that this is the, that's,
Well, remember you need more than 19 acres, period, so you're gonna have to find the rest
Oh,
of that
right,
somewhere.
but there-
and this is
There
a
are
part
other
of town that needs, oh,
So
Well, but
you're
we're talking
eliminating
about
what,
more
over
than
here?
19 feet outside the downtown area.
Right. We're talking
Well, this-
we're talking about.
This is
20
Crosby's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think we want to zone Crosby's for high density residential unless you want to lose Crosby's.
Why would you think you'd lose it?
Because the value of that land is gonna go up when you say it can be 15 units per acre, in my opinion. Don't you agree with that?
But if you look at the actual zoning map, the lot line goes right through Crosby's building.
Yeah, you can actually see it right here.
And the other thing I would say is that I
No,
don't
there's
feel
no way we
comfortable,
can-
I don't feel comfortable predicting what's going to happen. You zone it for 15 units per acre. I like to just assume you zone it for 15 units per acre, it's gonna happen somehow.
Okay, there's some land under here that's under the blue line.
Yeah.
That had, that has,
Yes, it's,
Madam Haddam and.
Mhm.
And dry land,
Yeah,
dry
there's-
cleaners.
That was thick enough so you could see it, but we'll cut it to that, we'll do the actual parcel lines when we draw it up, but it was just thick enough so you could see what the.
So Richard, you're gonna be starting, you think they have a same conversation?
I've already seen it.
Well, that's your question, right?
I'm,
Is if
I'm
you want
not,
to guarantee.
I'm not a fan.
Nor am I.
So, all right, guys, what about over here?
We're denser, but it.
So
I mean, I've seen
NIP,
it.
so this is part of
You can
their.
use some of the new-
But what do you think? What's going
Well,
on with these, what are these buildings?
The condos.
Condos?
Condos,
All right, so you've got some.
Fairly
condos.
dense, right? And you've only got one historic,
Which you could exclude. if you
which you could
wanted.
exclude, right?
How could you
So-
exclude it?
Sorry.
Go around.
Well, how do we draw around it?
You just go.
You've got to connect.
They-
I'm not a complete idiot. You got to connect it.
Right, so you connected along the street, yeah.
You can't go through the street.
I'm not talking about through the street, I'm talking about along the street, that's contiguous to that, that's
So you're
contiguous to
gonna,
that,
so you come from here,
yeah.
you're not gonna do that when you're gonna take this one.
There's a parcel here, so that's contiguous to that parcel's contiguous to that one, that one's contiguous to that one.
So.
Yeah.
So we're
may
gonna
wanna-
take some properties that we, yeah, okay.
We
Yeah,
may,
we're gonna-
Identify, not to leave.
Yeah, I understand.
I know.
Well, look to the people who live next door and see it's on, it's taken.
What?
Yeah.
Exclusion. The one
This
that you
applies to
building,
stuff, yeah.
Doesn't
I
matter.
think you create more of a debate amongst the neighbors, why they get excluded on that.
because that's
That's a point.
812 house and your house was built in 1960.
But the other thing I don't about that is look at the lot size of that house compared to these other lot
Yes,
sizes.
it's tiny.
Exactly, so if you make that a non-conforming lot in
Right,
that
then it-
district,
then it's
then it
protected.
can't, right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's protected, and you just leave the district.
That is that is a good sized area.
It sure is.
So how long,
And it's
so
near the
if we were to do
school,
this,
so it's a desirable place in terms of.
how
different
far
families.
over do you want to follow this entire red line that you already?
Yeah,
yeah,
You
that's
can
for
test
sure.
it. So then I'm just gonna circle you the whole of G 140, right?
Yeah.
And just see what that looks like.
And also geometry. And then, how many
Yeah.
areas are in that, in G 140?
You have it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, how are we doing on our criteria for G 140 here?
G 140 has,
You already have existing unit.
it's 19.
G 140 is 9.6.
9.66.
We think 158 is around the 19 with the modification.
18 point something.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
we're gonna
modification, so
little
we think it's 19.
Right,
So you've
so,
got your G 140. So now we know with these two tests, we know we have at least 19 acres,
right,
definitely more.
we've got maybe 28.
Right. So you've probably
Pretty
got your minimum
28,
base area.
right.
Do you want to look at the entire town now? Do you
Yes,
want to-
yes,
All right,
yes.
let's flip the boards. So I'll try to just roll it together.
Great, great, that's the.
There,
Am I-
I told you, I mean,
Yeah,
they're
they're,
today,
they
I
are,
saw them.
so. Well, they're able to tell me they're right. Right. Let's see it.
Our church is
Yes.
So that is driving us crazy, right? This area here, because we were looking at that board, and it's assuming
That's
that
the
entire
Western
thing
Woods.
is excluded. It's not. So what that means is that there are probably, there's two things that could be going on. The areas of protected land aren't updated in master law.
That's probably right.
That's part of it, that
Part
area.
of it, they may not actually be as protected as people think.
It's owned by a foundation
Okay, so they may not have protected every single part.
for educational purposes. I think.
Yeah.
You're talking about the Western Woods, not Gordon.
I was talking about.
Oh,
Yes,
these,
it's south of 128.
Where's Gordon?
You're calling right,
Okay, the green stuff.
All right,
yeah.
so mark up the parcel for me that you guys were talking about earlier that board might want to redevelop. I want to know where that is.
There.
Where is that?
Couple areas. Excluding a couple of squares.
But yeah,
So this whole thing.
Yeah, and the other place we were talking about in the LCD.
Oh, except for this, that's town.
The other place in the LCD is here, south of that, where there's already an existing office building there. I don't remember how many acres, but I think that
You mean the
one
medical
parcel
building?
is, yes, the medical building.
so we've got some excluded land in there, so we probably draw that to exclude the excluded land. You can do it the way you've got now.
No, we wanna go
You can
down
keep
here.
the sensitive.
We wanna
You
go
have
all
to,
of this.
they have, you have to pick up.
Yeah, and all of this,
You have to in order to get to five.
because this is Beaver Dam. That's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we will
Maybe
cast
it's
all of the,
storage.
you know, the acreage and what the.
It's an architectural masterpiece.
I'm not pick up all those.
he's getting rid of 54 trailers to put in a new storage building. What's this?
Business is good.
CST, South City Point.
So what's the problem with rezoning that? Yeah, that included.
Why not?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
This is all testing at the moment. There's
Yeah.
no, you have not made any decisions that you can't go back from.
Where's?
Lanes is,
It's off School Street.
no, it's, where's the place?
Yeah.
It's on Russell Road, so.
It's untouchable.
So that gray area is what the MIT students.
That's it.
Yeah. That's the lanes.
So that's the other public housing. So
How are you gonna, what are you proposing?
I'm just identifying. it.
No, I mean, when you brought up the planes, what were you proposing?
So
Well, see, if we brought in this parcel here, we've got the 5 acres.
that's the Brown's property.
Right,
Well. And what do you think they'll do with it?
So to the housing, so
that's what we're trying to get. But we
it's landlocked right now.
It's, which is the grounds first.
It's white.
I see.
That one.
Well, unfortunately,
So that could be very good.
yeah, it could be great. It's Jack's Hill. It's
So,
unbuildable, but.
No, but there may
Nothing
be
is
parts,
buildable in Manchester today.
there may be parts that are buildable.
Okay, so this,
You could create a.
you can get a 5 acre.
I believe so, because this was 4 acres, I think.
okay.
It's I don't care if it's unbuildable, it's zonable.
Right,
Right.
but how come this is all green?
It's a lot of wetlands.
Well, it's.
So,
It's excluded land.
It's excluded land, so it may fulfill, Title V, it may fill wildlife protection areas, that's being able to public owned, private owned.
Okay, so that's,
And the tax sensitive land.
Being
suggests that
sold
it
and
could be
open to
wetlands.
development.
there's only one house there.
There is a house.
Okay, but this has got to be.
It's 15
with the-
acres.
The, watershed for the Lincoln Street well.
Okay, yeah, we could do that,
I don't know.
For the Lincoln.
All right, so I have a very controversial thing put in front of you.
Yeah.
Just again to ask what your thoughts are, because I don't know, so this is a question, it's certainly not a suggestion. And there was a period, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, where a lot of golf clubs were going out of business, and they were zoned to various things, some of which people didn't know what they were zoned for. I see you have Essex Country Club, for all I know, it is going, an ongoing concern and will be for the next
It's
100
actually,
years,
it's
but I
actually,
thought I should ask.
it's actually not called Essex Country Club. It's
The county.
Essex County Club.
Oh,
Please.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
It's the
Yeah.
whole county. So that's what I wanted to ask, it's a going concern.
Why don't we zone it? Let's zone it for multifamily. Why not? If they want to sell it,
So,
they can sell
so
it.
this goes right to the heart of the, one of the criteria we did, which
Yeah.
is, you talk about a large development.
That would be a biggie.
So the one thing I could think of happening would be, the county club says, we want assisted living.
That's perfect for
Yeah.
Members.
it. Million
But-
copy.
So, okay, so play devil's advocate on that, that might be a separate zoning thing to do, because of course you can't mandate age restricted, so. So in that case, I would take it away and figure it out differently, but you know, I look at that blank space,
It's,
I wanna
it's
know what's
great.
going on.
You should just go ahead and zone it. Trust me, they'll never agree to sell it. They'll have, I'm a member there. You know, go to the annual meeting and try to, not a chance, you know.
I think they
You're
they
safe.
considered making it restricted agricultural, but there is a.
Yeah.
A 61A.
Because it's tax-
They considered
Yeah.
it as a 61A and they decided not to,
Ah,
because they felt that they were contributing to the town.
Okay, that's
Which
great, that's good for them, that's true.
18 years ago, and
But I don't think you wanna zone that, that
Well,
would
I
be
was
so much
gonna say,
up in town.
But not only that, the neighborhood,
I don't
I
wanna-
mean, I looked at Carroll
Yeah,
Street.
Yeah.
So, you know, as I said, it's my job.
Well, but there's also, I mean, there is all this watershed as well. I mean, there are concerns about the well and water quality.
So let's have a look at some of the other areas. We've identified two tasks, which is terrific, but what other areas?
Outside the circle.
So I'm seeing another big white space here. We can see there's a driveway access from
What's
the
that?
house, yeah.
That's Coburn Road.
That's Coburn Road, yeah. Yeah, this is why I asked, right?
I don't know why that's not. Protected, but
Well, is there a piece, let's see.
It's big.
Maybe
I think this is protected.
yeah, I know so too.
So
I think that's the thing. Yeah,
There's
I
the
hike in
pond,
there.
there's
That's,
the pond. But yeah,
Well,
I think
this is
it
a
is
long hill.
the Trask,
The whole long hill.
Trask
Right.
Meadow, the. Thought it was Manchester Essex Conservation.
yeah, and this is the railroad and there's a bridge that
Yeah,
goes across.
yeah. Oh, there's the meadow.
Yes.
And
Coburn.
then it goes
Yes,
across.
this- Oh, you know what this is? This is, there's a buildable, one or two buildable lots in there. See, I live over here. And so there are still two lots in there, up behind the Bergens and
Large ones.
and
That's a huge lot.
It's huge.
There's a big mansion here.
Yeah.
Where Mercedes Hammond is.
Yeah, so I was going to ask about this too.
So there
We
was
start to see different
one bill.
levels of
I think
housing
it's just one lot
density
left.
in here, and I'm curious what's going on in here. That's a relatively recent subdivision, probably maybe with the
Circle,
circle also.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, don't you know,
Oh, that is multi-family already.
Oh, yeah.
For a little house.
Yeah.
no, those are single family.
What, Surf Village is condos?
They're not, the.
That's not, this is
Oh,
not.
that's not-
Your village is over.
Surf
Here,
Village
so.
Okay.
Top
is.
Yeah.
The circular one.
Oh, I see,
Yeah.
so
Lyman,
Yeah.
Lyman
Lyman.
Surf
Circle.
Village, like the high school.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's this is Farley and Washington.
Yes.
That circle, one in the circle is blind and it's single family.
Yeah, it's a
Cluster.
So what do you think
I
about this?
wonder about
Okay.
a 5 acre plus area in that.
Over here.
What's,
Yeah.
what is
So
that?
just dig up Raymond and Butler.
We're here.
Raymond Butler.
Across from.
Oh, that's a lot of
What's
just
the
landed
beach
land.
thing?
I mean,
It's all.
it's all.
I think we're much better off
It's fine.
Up in there, up in there.
But I was thinking of it.
Well, the question is, do you want to play around with one
What street is
additional
that over there?
location?
Right.
Overland.
Because
Yeah,
now
I would say- I would
making
say
us think of some things we're not thinking of.
Right. Let's see what does,
Is there
maybe
something?
this, what does this area do? Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
Remember, we're just
Let's
doing
explore.
zoning. We're not building.
And-
Come on,
And you are exploring.
that is the most deceptive.
Well, does anybody?
That is the outgoing.
But right now, you are just testing. And that's
Right.
what it's about.
I think that's the real point.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
We're just suggesting, proposing.
And what about this?
I'm not sure that's up to date, so we've.
But if it's not protected, And if it's 5 acres, which it looks like it might be,
Yeah.
it's worth the test, no?
Well, I would
Check and make sure that it's before you.
I think, yeah, you go to
check
the
and make sure.
assessor's office and see what stuff it shows right there, yeah.
Okay. We have not talked about this sort of, we talked about it within the circle, we didn't talk about the rest of this area, so.
This
we're
is, this is an area where people are trying to preserve.
Yeah, I'm not talking about this up here,
Yeah.
but these sort of areas in here, is there anything that we should be looking at?
Well, maybe we should leave a whole bunch of.
This house should be moved in right there.
that's yours.
That's my house.
Well, let me just forbid.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, that's,
So
Absolutely.
Betsy's on,
Betsy's idea was Old Neck Road.
no, it was,
Older, so
It's right
perfect.
here, right here.
Yeah,
Here. This section right here.
yeah.
So, you know, if she would just do that.
Oh, no, just,
Is that 5 acres?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, the problem is it's only like 5 owners. It's easier to pick or acquire. Than one with 20 owners.
So that reminds me of this, you know, what is that?
That's a guaranteed development.
Right, that's my concern. What's that?
What is this? Do we know, is that something, it was Ocean Street.
Ocean Street has sharp strong.
Yes.
Yeah.
Again,
One owner.
I look at big lots and say, what is this?
But
Yeah, well, that's
What
one
about-
question to ask.
Well, you do the same thing, they'll be on Macros,
Okay.
so they're the historic houses.
That's who's on like.
What? It's just a layer.
that's the old Jordan Marsh house.
No, that's the Jordan, old Jordan house.
We don't have a historic district up there. do we?
It's not a historic district.
but
it's
okay,
a
sorry.
historic
Okay, fine. I favor national. Okay, so that's what Avatar and promotions. Archers are slightly further down.
The old Jordan place, Morse place, they used to call it. Yeah, that's.
So based on the previous criteria up here, it's unlikely that that many bright stars or regular.
Also,
Right.
you move out to the coast and it's again, it's guaranteed. It's guaranteed.
Yeah.
Guarantee what?
Development.
All
I
right,
think so.
so we have two
Pretty
districts
expensive.
in the circle
Pretty
that
expensive.
is
Just look at
now
it.
over 19 acres.
Right.
Yeah.
We have two
It's guaranteed.
districts outside, sorry, 3 districts outside the circle to pass.
Yeah.
Which we can do. I think that's a good start for now, for us to come. 1, maybe, yeah,
Maybe.
2, 3, yeah, and then we need to, I need to talk with the HLC about this.
Yeah, that one decision,
So I think
because that's 150 acres.
that would be interesting.
And supposedly there's 2 sections, one that's like 20 acres and one that's 30 acres that is upland,
Okay,
that might be developed.
That does, how much controversy does that tie into?
Oh, my God.
Well,
well, the deal is that it's guaranteed preserving.
the rest,
That would be, that would be.
Right,
the-
so
yeah,
that's, that's the
Yeah.
footprint thing.
because people want to preserve it.
Guaranteed preservation.
where's that? I think
That
that's
makes sense.
going to
Pine,
be.
upper pine,
Yeah.
upper
I
pine.
think,
You go
I think,
find, take a
I'll be
look,
honest, I think that's gonna be true.
drive a driveway right through there.
Yeah.
After January. I think this is a good place to end for tonight.
Okay,
Do you want to prioritize those
What?
criteria?
It's on the stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Do you want to prioritize those criteria now? Do you want to, we'll type everything up, send them to you and think about them.
It would be nice to mull it over.
yeah. And to actually look more at the spaces to see how some of the
Yes.
criteria might fit in.
Yes,
This
What if we
may
take that up,
intersect
give everybody
with,
that?
yeah, I will do,
an
absolutely.
idea that we had
Yeah.
before with our
Because I don't think
communication
people
group,
will
which
be-
is, this may intersect with an idea that we had in our communication group, that would have something called guiding
Yes.
principles.
That's what we're.
Yes.
And so
Guiding
what we need
principles.
to do is kind of boil these down and
Right,
distill them and make a fine wine out of them or some, whatever it is.
So you had a great
Something
idea,
shorter.
which is,
Yeah.
and you do a personal writing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of the copy, and then we can see.
And then we can have a discussion.
Yeah, exactly. So then we'll take these home, we'll draw them out, we'll test them, take them out the office, draw them out, test them, we'll get you the typed up version of that. We need to think about our next meeting, and we need to start thinking about the public engagement process, which should happen after that next meeting, because I think you want to see the results
Yes,
before you go to the public.
Yes,
right,
sure.
because we might knock some off.
Yes, exactly.
And at some point,
Yeah.
I hate to say it, you're gonna have to show them.
But
We're
we're
gonna
gonna
have
do
to
that
show-
first public meeting,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's why we have this down on the ground, so that people.
But we gotta have, we
Yes,
gotta show, okay,
No,
you
that's
know,
right.
yeah.
That's what she's saying is the public meeting after. the-
Great.
So, yeah, I think we should see the results of these. I think we should boil those down, as you said, to maybe 5 or 6 that are the most important. Then we can double check these areas based on what the numbers say, based on the criteria that you come up with, and decide, okay, what do we want to take to the public? How do we want to engage with them on that? I think that would make perfect.
So how, what do people think about what we take when we go public? Should it be, how much over the minimum should it be?
Let's wait and see, let's wait and see what comes out.
We think
Well,
we present an alternative.
Yes.
No, I understand, but obviously we could present 8 alternatives or 3 alternatives or 2 alternatives. That's why I'm fishing.
But I think we need to figure out what this comes up with
Yes.
and.
Yeah, I guess
But
you're
I,
right.
I think you do wanna present people, because you wanna give people a sense.
So you don't want too many.
No, absolutely. I think you want 2 or 3.
Yeah.
But one of the things we could do is use those criteria, defining the zones.
Yeah.
And then rank each
Sure.
alternative.
Yeah.
Yes, and say this seems, based on that criteria, seems like the best, but what do you think?
Yeah.
The other thing to understand is, of course, these areas, those are in districts that we already know are going to fail, right? So when we run things through the model, we're going to have to make some judgment calls about the dimensions that we test.
What do you?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
These areas here already, we know these fail, right? They because of their existing zoning doesn't allow them to be multifamily. The existing zoning districts don't have the dimensional standards. So we're going to make some choices about those dimensional standards based on what
Yeah.
you already passed.
Yep.
Based on other parts of your zoning. What I want to let you know is at our next meeting, I can't test the geography real time. That's just not gonna happen. It's maybe not do it that way, but I can test dimensional standards real time. So for example, let's just say I look at that and say, you know what? We're gonna make the minimum lot size 6,000, consistent with the other discussions we've had. And you come back and say, we see what it looks like at 10,000, we see what it looks like at 3,000. I can do that in real time. So,
Okay.
I wish we
Yeah,
could find
right
it in
here.
real time because it's
No.
too complex.
Oh, my
But for a
gosh.
committee, we can certainly do that.
So
Yes.
geographical testing, what does that mean?
So there's 2 components to the model. There's the GIS component. And there is, and I know that some of you have worked with this, but for those who haven't, there's the GIS component and then there's the spreadsheet component. So what you need to do is you go into our GIS. The state has these layers, the excluded land, the sensitive land, it has the parcel data layer. And you download that information. You draw the district, so we have to draw the district as we've been doing with these boundaries. We download the parcel information, we download these layers, the excluded land, the sensitive land. We basically create the information by parcel based on the state's data. And we put that into the Excel model, and then we put the zoning parameters into the Excel model and run it in
Yeah,
Excel.
that's what we did.
Right, I know, but we need to do it for all these industries.
So my question,
Oh, and the other
my
thing-
question is what geographical, is that different than what the,
Geographic information systems.
okay, so
yeah.
that's just what we,
The difference is you did, at least some of the ones we had, we didn't have the parcels. You have to include the right of way in your district.
Oh,
That's why
that's
we
right,
have
that is
ours.
correct.
Yeah. So
I guess, yeah.
I know, yeah, so ours will.
But there's no, what I was trying to get to, there's no other topographical.
No, that is correct, yeah, we're not doing top of that.
That's what.
Just the green.
Yeah, no slopes, no, yeah,
Yeah,
just the
yeah.
green.
Nothing.
versus-
So what we see is excluded on the state model is what's excluded.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
Even if
There is an override function, and that's what we were talking about at the last meeting, but you have to have a really good reason to be override, so.
Well, it's just a lot of land isn't level, because of the ledge.
The terrain.
Yeah.
Well, because it's like.
Hard to know.
Or so we think.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have somebody who wants to come here who thinks there's nothing to talk about.
Well, I was stunned to find out that we haven't changed our zoning significantly since 45. I guess that's because it's so hard to do.
We just keep adding
So
this.
we're
We just keep
telling you,
adding
Randy.
this.
we're about to make changes that may last for a very long time. So guesses that we may have about what's developable and what's not are really, we really, if we want to think long term
gotta
about
think
what we're
about it.
leaving as our
Yeah.
legacy here,
Right.
we want to think long term.
Well, and that's why I think it's so important what they're doing and what other communities are doing, 'cause it's not just an action, that's how we just gotta come into compliance, we'll get it done, it's what works for our town.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
figuring out the good planning practices that can help with other goals that meet community values, that's what we're trying to do. So we're starting here first, we'll take it to the public and show them, look, these are scenarios we came up with, this is what it looks like. What do you think?
Right.
And then we'll take it back and see where we get, so.
Yeah, 2 or 3 scenarios. Get
All right,
Yeah,
so,
okay.
so I'll work on the date, it will be after the holidays,
Yes.
for our
Yes.
next meeting.
Yes.
And then we'll be looking at the results of this, and then we can discuss our strategy with our public. Okay. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, that the maps look so.
What
a great project.
Yes, yep.
Oh, definitely help them.
And that was really helpful, thank you.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, well, I still on my face, yeah, sure. The carrot is yours. Stops. So. Student capacity offset, so it says they have a required capacity. And you give an example. Required capacity. Mixed use district, it's a standard, so there's a whole set. Oh, I see what. And using the compliance. The unit capacity of the man is 25 units.
Yes, no, I see what you mean, sorry, you do have to understand what, there's a calculation there, you try to keep, compliance not done.
Yes.
You do have to understand what, yeah, automatically offset, it's up to 25%.
Right.
So it depends on how much capacity is in there.
But it's 25% of the required.
Yes, no, you are
multifamily.
correct, yeah, I was.
Okay, so it's 25% of the 585 then. I mean, sort of hope, given that we've kind of taken it as.
Yeah, it is, but no, you're right, let me see if I can find the exact formula there.
Okay, that'd be great, thank you.
Just.
That would be fine. Now you first.
Okay, shall we proceed?
Yes, yes.
So next item on the agenda is acknowledgement to see the correspondence regarding emails from the range of abundance. Next item on the agenda is analyze the data of the districts to be MIT speaking to. We have 100 days, which is a week from. Is that okay with everybody? I don't know. I was looking at the meeting. A week from tonight is 7/7.
Correct.
There's no document.
I knew it's
Just like no star. I'll participate, but.
actually, it's a good week.
So it's a preview of the presentation. And it's very useful. Something we're not going to do, but there's an issue to have next one. Okay, subcommittee reports. Let's start with the outreach committee.
Can I back up just a little bit?
Sure.
I seen that. I think we want to invite planning board and maybe the select board I don't think that's something we want to publicize heavily for the public.
It'll be of course, a public meeting, and you certainly can. Specific invitations to the planning board and.
Do we even want to do that?
My
I mean,
concern,
it's open.
my concern about this presentation is that we have presented nothing. They're going to be presenting a plan, which I think is,
Unusual.
well, I don't want to say unusual, I think it's. There's a few areas where they came out exactly where we came out, and then there's some areas that are just terrible, in my opinion. And I don't understand their objectives. Their objectives seem to be kind of mathematical, we're gonna go in the center, we're gonna go on the side, we're gonna go around, but nothing about.
Well, let's wait till we see it.
Well,
Let's
my
not
point is-
prejudge it.
Yeah, okay, so my point is, yeah, that's a good point, but. I would just say emphasizing this may not be a great idea.
I agree.
Right,
We didn't hire these people. We
right.
gave them no mission of what to do.
We
They
interact,
offered and said, can we come in and do this?
right,
And we said, sure.
their
But
interaction with
they
us.
don't work for us. We're not taking their recommendations. It's lovely. MIT is a fine old institution, and et cetera, but this is not our report.
Right,
The very fact that we are holding a public meeting to present, so they can present their findings is curious to me.
Yes,
I mean, if they want to borrow the room and present their report, we could show up and say, wow.
The trouble is,
that's
if we
interesting."
show up, it has to be a public meeting.
Okay,
Right,
well,
right, that's the-
yeah, my
All
point is,
all-
this is not our
work,
thing.
All I'm
And we
saying-
don't want the public to say, wow, that zoning task force, they are crazy. Why did they come up?
They're already saying that.
Yeah, I know, it's true.
but that's not.
It doesn't go inside, it doesn't go in.
Right,
Yeah,
doesn't go in any media.
so is there some way we could frame this?
I agree.
Maybe?
That's what I would suggest, that Chris or someone, as an introduction, just explain what this is. This is just another data point that you're.
yeah.
So suggestion.
Well, in some way, it's a perhaps more considered, but maybe not. I mean, it's another data point, just like the letters that come in from citizens.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's just an example that a group of students,
It's part of their course assignment.
as part of the course assignment, have taken on.
I think it would be good.
And we didn't pay them to do this,
Correct.
and we have no obligation to take any action based on their.
Anything.
Either take it or leave it.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Just,
Well,
just more fresh ideas.
yeah, there you go.
Okay,
So we want to even put the presentation on the MBTA webpage.
No,
well, let's look at it, when we get it.
Let's see what it is. Let's see what.
I'm sorry,
I suggested this morning,
Sue said
we
she'll
should give people
put it
the
on the
link to the MIT webpage, and if they want to go to the MIT thing and
Oh,
look
that's
at what's on
interesting.
their webpage, that's fine.
That's not bad.
Which not our thing.
But that's not what we did with the 40B. Everything that came in created by anybody was put up on the website so people could see what was presented to us. So I don't think there's anything wrong with putting it on the website
As long as it's an introduction to
We
it.
have that, and we have that currently. We have the draft presentation and there's a disclaimer
Yeah.
page on the.
Yeah.
on the-
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
You know, like that.
Okay, December 7th. Oh,
oh dear.
We're doing some community reports.
Okay, so we met this morning, the outreach and communication subcommittee. And we came up with a few ideas for outreach. The first, we've rescheduled the density walk of downtown to Saturday, January 6th at 10 a.m. weather dependent, of course. We have been invited to speak at the Manchester Club, but they have bumped us to February, which is probably a good thing. We'll have more to share then. We decided to schedule 2 specific forums. Because what we found is the discussion group format works better than us sitting around a horseshoe desk with people on the other side. The one in common was very successful. About 20 people tuned in to the online Zoom version. But so we're gonna hold it here, but it's gonna be more conversational. It'll be a forum. And the first one is going to target specifically the business community in town. The Manchester merchants, the commercial property owners, and obviously anyone is invited. But we need to get them aware of what's going on. And that will be picked a date,
January 11th.
January 11th.
At 7 p.m.
At 7 p.m. Then we talked about a sort of public relations issue that we're facing on our task force, which is that there are residents who are worried that the task force is selectively targeting specific areas in town to benefit themselves or avoid their own places being considered. And we started to talk about how to counteract that false narrative. Really come up with great ideas, except one is Gar and I are gonna work on a outreach to the Attorney General's Ethics Office, just to make sure that we're doing everything we should be doing and come up with a message to help counteract that.
Well, we submitted paperwork.
Not sure everyone did. I'm not sure everyone's taken the training.
No, but we had paperwork for this specific task
That's
force
I know.
to disclose any potential conflicts.
Yes.
Right,
We did.
we did.
So why are you going back to the Attorney General? I don't get it.
The worry is we're choosing zoning areas. And maybe we didn't choose Jersey Lane, which is where I live. Was there any conflict of interest involved in the fact that we left Jersey Lane off the list? Or put it on the list?
I think that goes to our criteria.
I think that's a big piece of it. I think the worry is appearance more than anything else. And I suspect if we don't deal with it proactively, it could come back to us.
I'm certainly happy to see that we pursue every legal protection, that's great. But I think we're going to have this issue because it will be the issue no matter what we do. Because people are going to be hurt by this or perceive that they're going to be hurt. And this is going to be one of the things they'll look at. The NIMBY accusation is going to hit us head on. There's no way we can avoid it. I think the best defense is exactly what Sarah said, and that is to make sure we've got really good criteria and that we can really explain how we follow this criteria.
You know, I think that's the best.
And when we present,
That's exactly what I was gonna say.
when we present the options, people will have an opportunity to comment and respond, and nobody in the public, to the best of my knowledge, has come up with any suggested areas,
Well,
right?
there was a joke, and I may have been guilty of this. To say at one of our meetings, to say, I noticed we didn't include Smith's Point. Oh. Okay. I thought it was sort of a joke. All right. There may have been somebody in the audience who said,
Whoa, wait a minute.
yeah, wait a minute, why didn't they think about Smith's Point?
And that goes to the criteria.
I don't, does our criteria exclude by its nature or its effect specify?
I think our criteria should be specific enough to identify why we honed in on the areas we did.
Yeah, it'll be very useful for us perhaps after we have finalized these criteria to sit down and think once again, a little bit outside the box
Right.
about how we got to where we got, whether or not we really follow the criteria. It's a very good point. I mean, you know, maybe it's worth our while to, at that time, to really think about some of these areas that, whether, and say, well, all right, what is our justification?
Right.
Right, right.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
And the next forum that we're gonna have is on January 25th at 7 p.m. And that one is focused on the environmental impact of the zoning. And Chris's suggestion was to include specifically Concom, open space, coastal stream, you know, the other boards in town that aren't represented on the task force, but I want them to be up to speed on what's going on.
What's the date on that?
That is January 25th at 7 p.m.
Is all of this going on the calendar that's in,
Yes.
And not everyone has to come to the forums, but it's great if some people come, obviously. Because it is a more informal. It's not a working meeting like this.
Well, your comment this morning about if we're all sitting around behind desks, it's like we're the judges and they're the plaintiff or the defendant.
Let's see. And then the other thing is we had included a piece in the quarterly tax newsletter that went out in October. We're gonna do the same thing again with the January, and we're working on, Tiffany's working on a draft, and we'll have that done by December 14th. We're gonna review it and then finalize on the 15th when it goes out. That'd be good.
Yep, and it will go out in the mail on January 1st, so that's when taxpayers will receive it.
Our next bill, great,
Yeah.
Merry Christmas.
Right.
Right, here's your tax bill.
Well, then the last thing of note was we did have a period at the end of our meeting where we allowed comment from the public, and did hear some comment that this was just one person indicated that she felt like she was not allowed to speak. You know, she's viewing the meetings and so we let her speak. And we adjourned at 12:40. Anything I missed?
Nope.
That's very.
Sir, anything from the zoning?
No, we have not met because we were meeting with Emily, and it seems to me that we've kind of done our job of coming up with some initial possible districts, and
Yeah.
it's now, I think Emily's done a good job of carrying it forward.
Yeah,
Yeah, and now we're back to the board.
Yeah,
I think at some point, whether it be the subgroup or the main group, these areas, whatever we turn out, there's some fine tuning to be.
oh, sure.
Oh, yeah.
And that might be something that would make sense for the zoning task force to bring back to the larger group, because it's really detailed stuff.
Yeah.
But
Okay, yeah, we'll wait and see what Emily comes up with next time.
but we're not going to meet, that group is not going to meet between now and New Year's.
No. Is that okay? The only challenge is you gotta do minutes and have to go.
If we get in, the
No.
next one,
No.
she got away.
After the holidays, she said.
Didn't say what holiday. Just
Could we do? If this group is meeting and the whole group is meeting, then I think we could do the minutes for the subgroup.
Okay, okay.
I have to add something for the nebulous subcommittee on design standards. We have a couple of people, a couple of architects who have signed on, we're looking for a couple more. And I think one of the things we probably want to have in place as we start to even think about this is a set of criteria, probably derived or maybe identical to the criteria we're about to come up with. So how you feel about this, Chris, but I don't think there's much point in really trying to go forward with design standards until we have
The overall.
a real
criteria.
clear as to what it is that we're trying to preserve.
It's probably reasonable.
Yeah, but we kind of need to hone in on the districts a little bit and kind of figure out.
The other question for the larger group to think about is whether those design standards will apply to the districts that still want to negotiate about design standards.
Well, that is a very good question. Yeah, and I mean, so it's sort of similar to the thing about the demolition delay provision. I mean, it's sort of silly just to have that
Just be for the
for the
overlay
MBTA
district.
district. And, you know, maybe it can be, it seems to be different districts that have different design standards.
Sure.
Yeah.
So maybe there's a downtown set of standards which can be applied to project in downtown and residential ones for the in districts that are out in the residential.
So at any rate, the bottom line is we'll recruit a few more people and then hopefully get these guidelines in place in case we can start.
Yeah, and the only thing I would say is if we feel it's crucial to have design standards for the overlay districts, which I think it is. Do we get too bogged down in getting town approval if we try to do it across the whole town? Step one.
It's a good argument and it
It's
may
a
be
good
that
argument to do it
maybe
just for
there's
the
a-
overlay.
Well, so
maybe
there's
that they're separate
there's
proposals.
another
Yeah.
thing we should all look at, which is the planning board did change the zoning and came up with some very specific standards for site plan review, which includes some design standards, so this should be tied to that, so interesting.
And that was passed.
So that's the
Okay.
time less, you know,
So the site plan review includes specific, fairly detailed.
well, this things
I
like
don't think it's very
lighting,
detailed.
lighting, landscaping.
Okay.
Well, a larger project gets to have a site plan review.
Well, essentially, anytime it's a special permit. It's
Okay, so
Which is a lot.
No,
No?
just for planning board.
for planning board, yes, well, for,
That's a big.
okay. We're talking about things that don't require special permit.
But we are able to have site plan review.
Right.
yeah,
With the MBTA zone.
Okay, so site plan review is only if. But my question is. How big a project is it?
I think that's what we have to talk about.
so, actually, there is the thing in zoning bylaw, something about if there's more than 5 parking spaces required as part of the project or requires. a site
Okay, fine, yeah,
something
right,
like that.
that, yes, I remember reading something like that.
But I think in this, we have to decide when we're doing this is what portions of it do we want to do site plan review? I don't think we want to do site plan review on a
Or every
6,000 square foot
6,000 square
lot with a
lot.
3-family home.
Yeah.
I mean, you
Well,
know,
I do.
so,
I do. If somebody is demolishing and putting up a new building, why wouldn't you?
because it goes so contrary to anything we've ever done in town, it would never pass.
Well, that's a good argument.
That's my concern. We go too broad on things and we don't have a good record on passing zoning change.
Well.
Yes, we do, we have an excellent record.
The thing about
Turned down.
the thing about design reviews is that, as I understand it, and I'm sure you correct me if I'm wrong. You can still get around the design standard through special permits. It's not as heavy a burden. And these are going to be fairly mild.
Hold on, Richard. Design standards are different from site plan review. I agree the design standards should apply to everything.
Okay.
But not the site plan
I
review.
understand. Good
Okay,
agreement.
that's what I'm, sorry.
But our current design standards are as part of the site plan review.
Yeah, but they don't go into building types, I don't think.
I-
They're just landscaping.
In terms of what I think we're primarily thinking about in
Building.
terms of design standards, which would be specific to buildings.
Yeah.
We've never had anything like that.
Right.
Okay.
As far as I know.
Okay. Approval of meeting minutes.
Move to approve both meeting minutes. With the exception that I think Emily Ennis spells her name with an I rather than an E.
That's correct.
Oh, alright. Gail, you change Emily's last name?
I will do that. I've written it every time tonight with an I, so I guess I was buzzed out when I wrote the minutes.
That's been spell check.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a second.
Second.
All in favor with the amended
Aye.
unanimous. Are you gonna try to approve some of your subcommittees?
No,
No, okay. So, is there any public comment? Before we end the- Yes.
Catherine, it's Glenn Desmond. I asked, we were discussing earlier about what to do with the MIT plans and so on.
Yeah.
I don't think we should be afraid of just showing it off to the people who can see what another group of students or whatever, they don't have to be students, has suggested. It's just a suggestion.
Yeah.
You're not going to build that particular thing the way it's there. But I think people like to know different things. And maybe just looking at it, they might decide themselves, that's not good, or it's great, you know,
Yeah.
I never know.
Yep, okay, good.
And another thing, I know, I remember when we moved to town and we bought our place, a lot of people saying, who knew us, why would you buy a place in the village? You know, it was just a village then. Now it's not a village anymore because everybody who builds and buys a house, they tear down a house and build a monstrosity or whatever. That has become a little bit different than it used to be. But now, knowing that something else is planned ahead without knowing even what it's going to be like, contractors and others buy a place just because of what might happen next year, this year. And they plan, oh, we can put here 3 dwellings, you know, and they buy something that is less than a quarter, not a quarter, which I think is crazy. It might be a good idea to say you cannot just build wall to wall downtown just because you think something might come up that way in the plan. I think some people have they don't understand what this MBTA plan is, what actually they can do. And I don't know, it's crazy. And I live downtown in the area. So you hear different stories about everybody, what they think this is going to be like. And I think it's crazy in a way.
I think that's why we're gonna have that
Yeah.
public forum
Right.
with Emily, January or something to.
But I think that MIT is nice to have and see their view of what they planned and what they did.
You forgot to mention some another forum we were talking about, which is a current zoning district forum, where we discuss what the rules are for every zoning district that we have in town now.
Oh,
Right.
yes.
And so
we haven't
people.
set a date for that one, that's why I didn't mention.
Okay.
But go on, describe
And I
it.
have a
Yes.
question. When they were discussing earlier about the new developments in certain areas for housing and so on, when they talk about parking, is it about senior development or just in general?
Just in general,
Just because
residential.
then if it's senior, they need only one car.
Sure. No, that's right.
In the MBTA zoning, we can't
Can't
do
specify.
anything age
Oh,
based, so it has to be.
it's everybody.
We couldn't
then
go,
you
we
have to
couldn't.
Your actual development
Oh,
could be for seniors, but the zoning can't have different
Specify.
rules, yeah, for
We
seniors.
could encourage it, by giving a density bonus for seniors. So in any case, so this other form would be a description of every zoning district and what currently is allowed in every zoning district, just so people understand more about what zoning is.
thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, any other public comment? We don't get.
I don't see any hands up.
Okay,
How many people are on to?
Well, there was 10 at one point, now there's 7.
Oh, yeah, you should see the purchases there.
Oh, I see.
all right, I don't have any other straight matters, and so I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
We'll get the chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Chris.